everyone, and welcome to day 2 of NAA Apartmentalize 2024 in the City of Love, Philadelphia. We're wrapping up what has been a fantastic event. If you're not here and watching this, I'm here to say, shame on you. You should be here. It's a great event, and especially with the changing market conditions, there's so much information and so much thought leadership to benefit you and your business and your team. So if you weren't here this year, hope you have some FOMO. We better see you here next year. So this is Prop Talk. And this morning I have a special guest. And I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Chris Burns. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Thank you. We're going to have a good conversation this morning. Going to kind of dive into a few interesting areas, get to know Chris a little bit, and talk about kind of what it means to be a leader in challenging markets and challenging times. Maybe also dive into what it means to be a servant and do your call of duty for our industry.
Great. Yeah, look forward to it.
All right. Well, first, good morning. Thank you for joining.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and it's early morning, and you're bright and early, so good for us. If you don't mind, just because I know about you, and obviously we've talked.
Sure.
So tell our audience just a little bit about what you do today in your role with Willow Bridge, which is a new brand.
New brand.
Not a new company.
New brand for a long-standing company. That's right.
All right. So tell me a little bit about that.
So I am Senior Vice President with Willow Bridge. I oversee all multifamily operations for the southeastern U.S., everything south of the Ohio River, everything east of the Mississippi River.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a big quadrant in there, about 80,000 unit portfolio.
Oh, fantastic. And you've been there
I will be
for
there.
a hot minute.
I've been here 34 years, first with Lincoln Property Company,
Yeah.
which we were from 1965 until last October, when we were officially rebranded as Willow Bridge. But July will be my 34th anniversary.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. You don't see or hear that very often anymore.
Not a lot. I mean, we are one of those companies that does have a significant amount of tenure
Yeah.
at the mid-management level and up.
Oh, okay. Now, I don't know if we talked about this on the prep call, but if I remember correctly, weren't some of the founding members of Summit Properties, did they come from Lincoln originally?
They did. They did. Over the years, there's been a number of companies that
Sure.
have spun out
Yeah.
of Lincoln.
Yeah.
But
That's where
yes.
I kind of got my teeth wet in the industry.
Okay.
Or cut my teeth, I guess. It was with Summit back in the day.
Yeah.
And I know that's your neck of the woods.
Absolutely.
Yeah, loved it. And so I'm imagining there were some similarities in the management philosophy and the approach to property management.
There were. I mean, Lincoln having been around for so long was one of those very stable, fundamental companies that, when people left and went and started new companies, they took that philosophy and fundamentals with them, and created some great companies out of that foundation.
Yeah, you guys should be really proud, because I know a lot of them. There was a brief moment in Texas where I almost joined back in 1997, 98.
A missed opportunity.
Well, I used to think that, but I'm just saying.
Well, that's true. This is pretty exciting. So can't fault that.
It's like, I'm just saying. Well, I think about your tenure in our industry and your obvious leadership. So when you came into Lincoln originally, what roles did you have coming into the organization?
Well, when I first came to Lincoln, I was already a multi-site property manager.
Okay.
So I joined Lincoln as, we call them district managers.
Okay.
30 years ago. And basically that's a regional manager today that had 5 to 7 properties I oversaw, was based in South Florida.
Okay.
And had all my properties there and kind of, launched it from there.
Okay. So, and the reason why I was asking that is trying to understand, as the business grows and you take on additional leadership roles, obviously the leadership has to change. And there's also a term, I'm sure you're familiar with it, like wartime CEOs.
Sure,
right?
sure.
I would imagine I know how your tenure, you've been through multiple economic downturns, right?
Correct.
So what do you think is most important as a leader when we are facing really tough market conditions and challenging times?
Well, I mean, leadership and leaning on that prior experience of prior cycles is really important because, realistically, it's probably 10 years between major cycles.
Yep.
And in that time, a lot of the people that have onboarded between cycles have never seen a downturn. Their experience has been totally hot markets, easy to lease, high occupancy. And when that shifts, some people find themselves like in a leasing role. They've never had to lease when there's major competition and there's concessions in the market, and you've really got to hone your skills and sell your product. And it's a big shift. So being able to provide some guidance and leadership and talk about techniques and the way you can do that, I mean, it's really important to getting your team right as that cycle changes.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think too about I heard there was a Meet the Expert session on Wednesday,
Yeah.
and it had Cindy Claire and Wanda
And
Alex.
Jack Hugh. Yeah.
And they were talking about really one of the most challenging positions in our industry, which I agree with, but I've never really heard anyone articulate it, is really the regional manager's position. There's a lot of challenges out on site, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because working in someone's home, which is effectively what we do, big challenge. But that leap from I'm a property manager where I can touch, I can lean in, I can, if I don't delegate, fix it myself, to really making that leap to lead from being detached, right? Being past arm's length. What advice do you have for regionals right now that are themselves finding themselves in the same position and haven't been through it before?
I mean, I think it's really important to refine your time management skills, because you've got to be able to, you may have 5 or 6 or 7 properties, and you've got to compartmentalize each one of those and be able to give the right time and guidance to the teams and evaluate what changes you have to make. So being an effective time manager really helps in that process, because it's easy to get sidetracked and spend all your time on one problem, and you've got major fires burning somewhere else. So that time management's really a critical factor.
Yeah, that was probably the big challenge for me, in part because I have no concept of time.
Right.
And I go all hours, so that's a challenge. I don't know if you mind being vulnerable for a second, but if you think back to your own career, what do you think is maybe one of the toughest leadership lessons that you maybe learned personally?
I think that the hard thing is in this business, you tend to work with small teams first on site. You work with a small team, you're a regional, then you have a team of managers, and the industry sort of compartmentalized in these little groups, and it becomes like a family. The hardest thing is sometimes you have to identify people in the family that aren't either the right fit or they aren't performing to the extent you need, and sometimes you got to say goodbye, and you have to make that decision and make it quickly. Just from the personal side of it, that's always when it's hard to call somebody in and say you can't work here anymore, or you're not meeting our expectations.
That's a really good point. My own journey with Resman, when we started, there's a handful of us, literally one hand.
Yes.
And I think people who really like that small knit family environment, it's not always, like you said, it's not always a good fit to go into a bigger environment, to let go of the reins, to not be able to, have that side-by-side constant conversation. The other thing too is making the mistakes of putting people from property management into prop tech positions and not really having a full understanding of what that meant yet.
Right.
And those are tough conversations, and you carry that weight with you.
Well, there's a tendency, I think, in our industry sometimes. Somebody comes into the industry, they're very good at leasing, and both there's a desire on their part to grow, but sometimes I think we push people along. Okay, now you're going to be an assistant manager, or you're going to be an IT person, or you're going to be this, and they're really not suited for that. Absolutely fantastic at leasing, and that's probably the space they would excel in.
Or something else that's based on, like their value system is based on quantity,
correct.
right? Maybe versus quality.
Right. So as you move them, all of a sudden they were a star performer here, but they're really not over here.
Well, that's a good point, because I think that's a good lesson for everybody that's listening. When you start to understand that somebody with really good work ethic and effort can be in a position that's not a natural fit, and they can do a good job.
Right.
But can they do a great job? And then how long can they sustain that? Long term, will they be happy? And I think that's a valuable lesson too, to get comfortable with that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we talked about how long you've been in the industry, but we don't talk about age, because I'm right there with you, baby. I'm just curious with, so in my side, I refer to that as like domain expertise, right? From a product perspective, not domain expertise. So you're an expert in this space, in my opinion. Getting past 2024, right? And you've probably heard the mantra that we've been wearing out: survive till
25 or fix it in 26.
Oh, see, so
it's evolving a little bit from survive to 25 to.
Okay, so I came up with my own mantra. I said it's going to take grit to get through to 26. So
okay, there you go. Fix it in 26.
But I'm kind of greedy, so I don't know. I might still hang on to that one. But past this year, what do you foresee as being the biggest challenge for 2025 for property managers across the country?
I think we've got a lot of supply. We got a record delivery of supply this year. It's probably going to take the next 12 to 14 months to really absorb a lot of that. So those markets that are getting hit with a lot of supply, they're going to drag a little bit to get through. I think the economy, obviously, maybe you heard we got a little election coming up later this year. How that plays on the economy and how that recovery goes. We're going to feel some effects of that, I think, for the next 6 to 12 months.
I think so too. I think early on there was some optimism this would be more short-lived than it is.
Yes.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. What is the estimated number of units delivered this year? Do we know? I know last year
it's over
like 600,000. Ended up being more like 560 or something.
Something like that. Yeah. And it's going to be around that, I think, this year.
Yeah. So you're right. I totally agree. And that's when you've got to sharpen your skill set and get back to basics. We always say that, get back to basics.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if we stay on that track about the industry and looking in the future, you come here, I'm a technology entrepreneur. I love technology. I like AI. We had such a buzz. Centralization was talked about. But back half of the year, everybody was talking about AI. They're still talking about AI. Everyone here's talking.
Lots of AI platforms.
I got a unique opinion. I believe that AI is not the end-all be-all. And I think a lot of operators jump to that to solve real problems. But that's not the total solution.
Right.
But do you really think we will get to this, future state where we are so AI dependent that we are not staffing and putting bodies out on site?
No, because we're in a people business, and there's always going to be a people touch to the business. I think customers want to talk to somebody. Yeah. We all go through that, whether it's banking or whatever you do, and you can't get to a person. You get a bot, and you get to the next bot, and you want an answer from a human, and you can't get there. And I think some industries that have gone that direction, I think eventually you'll see them come back to a midpoint, because they realize their customer wants to talk to somebody.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. There's a session I did on Wednesday. And when I submitted it, it was based on my experiences in vacation short-term rentals. So in my role, I go back between multifamily and vacation industry. And 2023 was their year of normalization. They took a 30% hit to their revenues, which is a significant hit here in the United States. But when I was watching their conferences at the back half of the year and the panels, the first half, no surprise to what you just said. The companies that really succeeded and were beating their competition in that industry, you probably know this, light years ahead of us in seamless, touchless, digital interactions with the consumers, right, the guests. They were focused on and did bring humans back into the interactions. And that's how they were winning in their market.
I think that's exactly right. And I think a lot of companies are going to learn that lesson as we go through this AI thing. I mean, there's no question. AI is going to revolutionize the way we do a lot of things and probably eliminate a lot of tasks.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're gonna take the people connection totally out of it.
So everybody here, our frontline teams are like, oh, it's going to take my job.
Yes.
And I know the anxiety there. And I think it's just going to come down to whichever creates the better experience is going to win.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my joke is I tell people, if you're working fast food and you work the drive-through, I think your job's a trouble.
Right.
It's like, I don't think that job's going to make it because I don't have a great experience there ever. All right. Well, so I agree with you. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to pivot a little bit now.
Okay.
Because I really want to talk about your role as a leader in the associations, right? Local affiliates. You're a vice chair, right?
I'm the NAA vice chair. Yes.
I'm working with AAGD, and I'm on the leadership lyceum, and we're talking about membership.
Okay.
And how are we collectively? And I'm hearing a lot of the same challenges in my lyceum class because we have affiliates represented as well.
Sure.
About membership and engagement and how we can improve that and keep growing it. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit just about your perspective and view. Obviously, you put the work in and the time in, but what would you say to some of our younger, or not even younger, because some people have never been involved, but can still get involved and still have a lot of years left in this space?
Right. Well, I think there's two sides to it. I think as an industry and an association, we've got to continue to change because you have to reach those younger people that have different interests and different perspectives. But at the same time, those people that are coming into the industry, you've really got to sell the value proposition that this is where you go to get educated. This is where you go to get information. And this is where you come to have your industry represented from an advocacy and legislative standpoint. I mean, like any other industry, there's a lot of things happening in the regulatory and legislative environment that aren't good for the industry and aren't good for the business. And to protect your job, back to your earlier point, you want a strong organization out there representing, what the industry stands for, what our values are, and getting involved at your local association, putting in time, understanding the industry, and supporting local, state, national apartment association is really the way you do that. And again, ultimately, what's in it for you? It protects your job long term in the industry.
So for those managed owner-operators that maybe aren't supporting their team's engagement, I know I've heard things over the years, and I've heard it again recently. They feel like their people are going to be poached, which to me, that's a hard thing for me to hear, that's a reason not to be involved.
Exactly, because that's really not the environment here.
No, it's not.
No.
And isn't that more a reflection on your company, if that's your concern?
Absolutely. I think that's more, you're not secure in what you're doing to create a culture for your people, that if you send them to an event to find education and communication, that if you're totally worried that they're going to leave your company, you're probably not building the right culture.
Yeah. When you have the benefits of shared knowledge and networking, you rise the tide.
That's right.
When you look at your teams, do you have a directive? How do you internally support? Because I know you have a lot of people here present.
Right.
How do you drive that down and push that through your organization?
Well, again, we very much as a company support the associations at the local, state, and national level, encourage our people to attend educational opportunities, go to the trade shows, learn about technology, learn about things that are out there, and ultimately volunteer to serve on your association. Get involved in local advocacy. Work your way up to the state level, and hopefully eventually, like me, you're somebody that's been involved local, state, national, and you're sitting here having this conversation.
Yes.
You know,
And I like that you brought up advocacy. We had our third user conference in May. But one of the things, because I'm a unique little bird, I really haven't been to anybody else's because I built my own software.
right.
And we made sure, and we have had a legislative general session for all of our users,
Hmm.
because I think sometimes they really don't know what is happening to our industry and how it impacts them. Like, every time I see that stat about we employ, is it 17 point something million people or support it in the United States, they're all voters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything that happens here, right at the highest levels, impacts the person who's down there, picking up grounds, right?
Right.
Our ability to do the job, our ability to pay them for that job.
Right.
So yeah, advocacy is a huge deal. So thank you for mentioning it.
And you're right. I mean, it's important. It's important for you to educate your team,
Yeah.
because they are voters, and if they don't really understand the environment and what's happening regulatory or advocacy wise, sometimes they're voting against their own employment and don't really realize that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It was crazy, because I know you know about this. When I don't know if it's a bill, and I may be incorrect, proposal that was before a committee that has the housing contest in the language.
Yes.
Is that?
Well, there's some reference in the media out there to the industry and companies in general to do with rent increases over the last couple of years that sometimes they refer to us as a cartel. Very, very negative connotation
Very negative.
for the industry, but it's kind of a media driven,
Yes.
storyline.
Yeah. So I don't know that I can do a lot. I mean, I donate, but as far as like one person can make a difference, I can tell you how many people since Advocate that I have come up to and talked to in our industry. And it's like, how do you feel about, like, how's it going being in the housing cartel? And it's funny how many people had no idea about that language.
Absolutely.
Because it does paint a picture of us that's not fair.
Absolutely.
Bad apples do not define the bunch.
Yeah, and I think that again, that's part of educating your teams, that tell them to pay attention to what's going on in the media and current events, and really understand how you're perceived out there.
Yep. Got to tell our story.
That's right.
If you don't,
Nobody else is.
shape the narrative, they'll make their own.
They will.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Well, before we do a complete wrap up, I'm just curious. What is something that might surprise people about you that they don't know?
Probably the thing that surprises most people is I have a couple of classic 1970s Mustangs. That's kind of a hobby. So most people really don't know that until.
Are they all 1970s or
one's
70s?
one's a 1971 Mach 1 and the other's a 1972 Mach 1.
Is the Mach ones? Because that's the ones that was used in like a racer.
If you saw the James Bond film Diamonds Are Forever, the red car that he like drives between the buildings, that was a 1971 Mach 1.
Oh wow! So my grandfather had a 1967 Mustang convertible.
Yeah.
I was really hoping I was going to get that.
It was going to pass down.
And I didn't get it. And I wanted it. But ironically, I learned how to drive, which is bad. To this day, it was a mistake. In a Celine Mustang, stick shift. I have a serious problem with speed to this day.
People today really know how to drive a stick shift because they've kind of disappeared.
Yeah. I guess I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed driving it. So maybe the high-end sports cars. But I have a problem with speed, so I probably don't need one.
Yeah, probably not.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.
It was fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. And guys, we're going to wrap. So if you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to subscribe to Prop Talk wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, so that you can keep up on all things in the multifamily ecosystem with Prop Talk, a podcast powered by Resman. And also, thank you for listening in. If you're watching, thank you for that. And if you're listening, thank you for letting us in your ear. Bye, guys.
Bye.